everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about some data that I have to find out whether male and female students differs in their learning motivation. It's a simple question, but as always in statistics we need evidence to support any conclusion. So I have a template of the record for this group comparison, and also I already have my research question, which is there any significant mean difference in learning between male and female students? To answer that, I set up two hypotheses, which the first one is the null hypothesis, or HO. We type it, and the hypothesis that I have is there is no significant difference in learning motivation between male and female students. And also I have the alternative hypothesis, which is the HA, says there is a significant difference. Okay, now let's move on to the data so we can set up this in SPSS. Okay, so the first one, we copy the variable group, which is the sex or gender. We copy all of it. And we paste it in the first column in here. Ooh. Next, we do the same with the numerical data, which represent the learning motivation score. We also copy it. And we paste it next to the variable. Okay? And after pasting the data, we click on the variable view at the bottom of the screen in here. You'll notice SPSS give default the variable names like var 00001 and var 002, and we change it to something more easy to understand here. Change this into sex, and here we can change it to LM. And LM here stands for learning motivation. Now, still in here, variable view, we can add label to make it easier. And for LM, we can type learning motivation. So it's easier to understand in the output later on. Lastly, we need to adjust the column, the measure column in here. So for the sex, change the measure into nominal, it's already a nominal since it's a categorical variable. And for lm, change the measure type into scale because it's a continuous numerical variable. Once this done, we can analyze it. And if you remember, before we do the t-test, we have some prerequisite tests that require, let's say. And to do that, we can click on analyze, and a descriptive statistic will appear. Then we slowly moving to explore. Then we click it. Then we choose the sec in the factor list and learning motivation on randomness. And for plots, we can check mark the histogram, normality plots, and power estimation. For this one, this is a must because it's needed for the homogeneity test, which also another of prerequisite test before we do the t-test. So if you don't check this, your homogeneity test won't appear. Then we click continue, and okay, now we wait. Okay, now we have the descriptives here. We could copy this into the template. And as you can see here, on average, the male students here scored about 55.7 in here, and the female students scored 52.8 learning motivation. So just looking at this averages, it may seem like male students are a little more motivated, right? But is that difference really significant? So, to prove this, if this significant or not, we could do it with t-test. But before jumping into the t-test, we need to check a couple assumptions or the prerequisite test. First is the normality test. In here, test of normality. You could also can copy it, so it easier. So see it easier. And you see here the significant or the p-value for a data uh, to be for a data that distributed normally. This need to be above 0.05, which both of the group did above, right? So that means this data is already normally distributed. And after this, we could continue to the second prerequisite test, which is homogeneity of variance test. And we could also copy it. Please. And you can see here in the significant or p-value. All of them are above 0.05, right? So that means this data also pass the homogeneity of variance test, which means the variance are equal. So it is safe to use the standard t-test. And now, for the main part, the independent sample t-test. Okay, to perform an independent sample t-test in SPSS, first we open the dataset again in here. Then we click Analyze, and we choose Compare Means, and you can see there is the independent sample t-test. We click it, and we move the learning motivation into the test variable and the sex as the grouping variable. In this we choose define groups. Group 1, you can do male or female, but let's do male in group 1. And group 2 for female. Then we continue. Then click OK. And we have the independent sample t-test. We could also copy it, but we could also use it in here. Paste it in here. Ooh. To change this so we could make it easier to see. Okay, I hope you guys can see it. Yeah, okay. Okay, so because we pass both of the tests for homogeneity of variance and also the normality test, we could see in here we could use the equal variance assume here, and we see the p-value, which is 0.177, which means is greater, right? Greater than 0.05. That means we fail to reject the null hypothesis. In other words, even though the male students had slightly higher average, but that difference isn't really statistically significant. So we can conclude that because we fail to reject the null hypothesis, right? So the conclusion is there is no significant difference in learning motivation between male and female student. And that's it. Even a small difference in average can look meaningful, but with proper testing we can see that in this case the difference could just be due to chance. And thanks for following along, and I hope this video made the comparison process a little bit clearer. And thank you for watching.